Just as the light of faith makes things known that surpass human reason, so the light of reason makes known things that are attainable by natural reason. Yet both come from God, the source of all truth. The candle trembles, wax runs down the wood in slow rivers. The monastery sleeps, but not me. The air smells of stone, ink and fatigue. And even here in the stillness I can hear your world, the hum of screens, the pulse of anxiety, the endless scroll of people searching for meaning and finding noise instead. You live in an age that can explain everything yet believes in nothing. You trust progress more than wisdom, speed more than silence. You're not alone in feeling lost. I've known that emptiness too. My name is Thomas Aquinas. Some called me the dumb ox. Too slow for my century, too quiet to please, too thoughtful to obey. Tonight I'm not here to preach. I'm here to share. Like everyone who keeps watch in the Sleepless Society, I don't speak to convince you, but to offer a way of seeing. What you make of it is yours. I'll tell you a little about my life, but mostly about yours, and about the tension we all carry. How to reconcile faith and reason, heart and intellect, the need for meaning with the need for clarity. I spent my life trying to unite those two forces everyone sets against each other. One burns, the other illuminates. One comforts, the other questions. Without both, the world collapses into two abysses, fanaticism or cynicism. I believe our age suffers less from a lack of science than from a lack of sense. We know how everything works, but no longer why we live. We pray less, scroll more. We don't seek truth anymore. We seek to be right. And in that noise, the soul grows tired. You've probably met Nietzsche, the other watchman of this fire. He visited this channel once, remember? He shouted that God was dead, and many felt liberated. I only heard exhaustion. Tonight, I answer him, not to resurrect God, but to remind you that faith isn't owned by any religion. It's the quiet courage to believe in beauty, in kindness, in understanding itself. Somewhere between the world's noise and God's silence lies a fragile, luminous space. The moment when thought and heart stop fighting and begin to breathe together. That's where I live, and that's where I'll take you tonight. If you're listening now, maybe you too struggle to fall asleep, so welcome to the Sleepless Society. Twice a week, new companions join you here, thinkers, poets, wanderers. Together we keep the night, gently remaking the world. A place to rest, to learn, to think about this vast and fascinating mystery called life. If this fire warms you, subscribe and stay a little longer. Now settle in, let the night draw closer, turn off the lights, breathe. I'll take you back to where it all began, to the cold halls of an Italian castle, where a quiet child learned to think more than he spoke. That's where I discovered that understanding can hurt more than ignorance, that silence can be louder than words, and that true wisdom isn't about shining, it's about learning to love in the dark. I was born in a castle in southern Italy, a place where the stone walls held more prayers than laughter. My family wanted me to become a nobleman, to fight, to lead, to extend the Aquinas name across the land. But even as a child, I felt something pull me elsewhere. Not toward power, but toward wonder. I remember staring at the way dust danced in a beam of light and thinking, why does beauty exist if no one sees it? I suppose that's when philosophy began, not in a library, but in a child's amazement that the world is both ordinary and divine. When I grew older, they sent me to the monastery of Monte Cassino to study. That's where I first tasted silence, not as punishment, but as invitation. I would sit by the window and listen to the wind against the stones. It sounded like thought itself. Later, I wrote a line that summed up everything I felt back then. Wonder is the desire for knowledge, and I meant it. Wonder is the birthplace of every question worth asking. Without it, knowledge is just data, it's impressive but hollow. They said I was slow. They called me the dumb ox. I can't say they were wrong. I did take my time. I thought slowly, spoke rarely, and when I finally did, it wasn't to impress, but to understand. The name stuck, but I learned to wear it with a quiet smile. Oxen move slowly, yes, but they pull the world forward. Patience ploughs deeper than pride. My family didn't understand. When I told them I wanted to join the Dominican order, to give up our wealth, our lands, our armour, they thought I'd lost my mind. Why spend your life in silence when you could command armies, they asked. I told them the same thing I might tell you tonight, because I'd rather command my soul than a city. They didn't like that answer, so they locked me in a tower. Days passed in solitude. The walls were cold, but my thoughts were warm. They tried to break me with temptation, sent a woman into my room, hoping desire would do what reason could not. But the more they tried to distract me, the clearer my purpose became. That night I realised something that would define the rest of my life. Faith doesn't begin in obedience. It begins in rebellion. The courage to follow your conscience, even when love or fear tells you not to. You see, every generation tries to tame its dreamers. You were told to be practical. I was told to be obedient. Same fear, different century. The fear that wonder makes us unproductive. The fear that silence makes us irrelevant. But without wonder, the heart withers. And without silence, we never hear the truth whisper back. Sometimes I imagine how I would fare in your world. The dumb ox with a smartphone. I'd probably be diagnosed with existential burnout before finishing my first prayer. Maybe they'd call me an introvert with Wi-Fi, someone who thinks too much and posts too little. But even now, I believe that slowness is not stupidity. It's devotion. To read deeply, to love slowly, to think until the noise becomes melody. They locked me up to save my soul. It only made me read faster. That tower became my first monastery, my first classroom. Solitude taught me what no teacher could, that truth isn't found by running, but by remaining. In that silence, I met a strange kind of freedom, the freedom of someone who no longer needs permission to think. And perhaps that's where it began, this hunger to understand not only God, but the structure of the world itself, why things exist, why they move, why they desire. I didn't yet know it, but I was walking toward a war of ideas that would shake the centuries. Because once I stepped outside that tower, I discovered something far louder than temptation, the argument between faith and reason. And that, my friends, is where the real noise began. Paris was burning with ideas, not flames, arguments. In every corner of the university, someone was shouting in Latin. Aristotle had just been rediscovered, and the world didn't know what to do with him. His logic was precise, his science magnificent, but his God, well, his God didn't look much like mine. The church trembled, philosophy excited. I found myself in the middle of the storm, trying to tell them both that the lightning wasn't the enemy. It was the light. The theologians accused me of bringing pagan thought into sacred halls. The philosophers mocked me for still believing in angels. Everyone wanted me to pick a side. But I had no taste for civil wars of the soul. I believed, and still believe, that truth cannot contradict truth. If something is true, it cannot be dangerous to faith, and if faith is true, it cannot fear the light of reason. I remember writing once, in a moment of peace between two debates, faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirit rises to the contemplation of truth. It felt almost like a prayer. 2 wings, not one. Faith alone falls into superstition. Reason alone collapses under its own arrogance. But together they rise. Together they let the human spirit see further than either could alone. Still, not everyone agreed. Some of my brothers in faith told me that questioning was disobedience. Some of my friends in philosophy told me that believing was weakness. I smiled at both, partly because smiling was safer than arguing, partly because I knew both were afraid. Faith feared being proven wrong. Reason feared being proven small. To me, Aristotle wasn't an enemy. He was a conversation partner, one who spoke the language of the intellect. Christ spoke the language of love. I simply wanted to make them meet, to build a bridge between Athens and Jerusalem, between logic and grace. Because reason by itself builds ladders but never skies, and faith, without reason, dreams of heaven but forgets how to climb. The university became my battlefield, the air thick with candle smoke, the clatter of parchment, the murmurs of accusation. I would stand before my students, their eyes wide, their pens ready, and I'd say, reason builds the map. Faith whispers why we walk. Some wrote it down, others laughed. A few, maybe, understood. Centuries later, your world is still fighting the same war. You just change the weapons. Back then we argued about Aristotle. Now you argue about algorithms. You set science against spirituality, neuroscience against meditation, artificial intelligence against the soul. You debate as if wonder and logic were mutually exclusive, as if the microscope could kill mystery. But science doesn't destroy faith, it refines it. When a physicist looks into a galaxy and feels awe, that's not blasphemy. That's prayer in another dialect. When a neuroscientist studies consciousness and admits she doesn't know where thought begins, that's humility, the first step of devotion. The problem isn't that science looks too closely, it's that faith stopped looking at all. Sometimes I imagine Nietzsche sitting at one of those debates, arms crossed, smirking. He'd say, "You're still clinging to God," and I'd answer, "Maybe." But at least I invited him to the conversation. He killed God. I just gave him a seat at the table, because for me, faith was never a blindfold, it was a lantern, and reason was never a weapon, it was the handle that steadies the flame. When used together, they don't compete, they complete. Every age tries to build a world without contradiction. Yours is no different. You replaced angels with algorithms, miracles with data, yet your loneliness has never been more divine. You still stare at the stars and wonder who's looking back. You still write love songs to what you don't understand. You still pray, though now you call it hope. Faith and reason are not enemies. They are two ways of paying attention, one with the mind, the other with the heart. The moment you lose either, truth becomes a theory instead of an experience. That's what I tried to tell them all those centuries ago, and maybe, just maybe, it's what you needed to hear tonight. Because somewhere along the way, the world forgot both the map and the whisper. I've always believed that to understand a century you must look at what it worships. In mine, people worship salvation. In yours, they worship explanation. You live in a time that measures everything: productivity, happiness, heartbeats, except emptiness. You replace confession with comments, contemplation with notifications. You've built machines that think, but souls that no longer do. In my time, we feared heresy. In yours, you fear Wi-Fi loss. You say, "My battery is dying," with more emotion than "my soul is tired." You whisper prayers to algorithms, not angels. The new temples are made of glass and code, and their priests wear headsets. You call it progress. I call it distraction disguised as destiny. Once, faith meant mystery. Today, it means marketing. You count followers instead of blessings. You search for meaning in dopamine loops, wondering why joy evaporates the moment you find it. Nietzsche declared God dead. You just unfollowed him. The tragedy is the same, a world that no longer knows where to kneel. When I wrote Summa Contra Gentiles, I said, "To one who has faith, no explanation is necessary. To one without faith, no explanation is possible." I didn't mean blind belief. I meant that some truths can only be seen when the mind stops squinting. Faith is not about ignorance, it's about trust in reality itself, in the quiet order that hums beneath the noise. You can't reason your way to silence any more than you can shout your way to peace. You live surrounded by sound, yet the absence of it terrifies you. The moment the music stops, you rush to fill the gap with something louder, as if silence were a kind of death. But silence isn't death. It's the sound of being alive enough to listen. In losing silence, you didn't just lose calm, you lost the sacred. I see your world from this strange eternity, and I can't help but smile. You build AIs that write poems, design souls out of circuits, and call it creation. Perhaps that's your way of longing for God, to invent something that reflects you, the way he once did. You've just forgotten the difference between imitation and incarnation. You don't lack intelligence, you lack reverence. You know how to split atoms, edit genes, and simulate love, yet the simplest mystery, a heartbeat, a sunrise, a moment of kindness, still leaves you uneasy. Because science can explain the mechanism of life but not the reason to live it. And yet, I don't despair for you. Beneath all the noise, I can still hear the questions. What am I doing? Who am I becoming? Why does it all feel hollow? These are sacred questions. The fact that you ask them means the flame isn't out yet. You don't need miracles, you need meaning. Even now, the way back is not upward but inward, through attention, through wonder, through the gentle act of seeing what is without needing it to perform. Because truth doesn't scream, it waits, and if you stop long enough, it will whisper again. So no, I don't think your age has killed faith. It's simply exhausted it. But exhaustion can be holy too. It's what happens just before surrender, just before you finally stop fighting what's real. And when that moment comes, when your mind grows quiet and your heart dares to listen, you'll discover what I did centuries ago, that the silence you fear is not the absence of God. It's his echo. Because even now there's a way back, not through miracles, but through meaning. For most of my life, I tried to think my way to heaven. I built sentences like cathedrals, each word a stone placed carefully on reason's foundation. I believed that if I studied enough, argued enough, understood enough, I could reach God by logic alone, a ladder made of syllogisms and hope. But truth has a strange sense of humour. It lets you climb for years, only to show you one morning that you were standing at the summit all along. It happened late in my life. I was preparing to finish my greatest work, the Summa Theologica, thousands of pages, years of labour. Then, during Mass, something shifted. I can't explain it without reducing it, but in that moment, reason bowed. Everything I had written, every idea I had defended suddenly felt small. Not wrong, but inadequate, like straw before a fire. I had spent decades describing light. Then, for one heartbeat, I stood inside it. Faith begins not where thinking ends, but where thinking bows. Nietzsche would have hated that moment. Too much light, not enough ego. But that's what revelation does. It dissolves the self, the way dawn dissolves shadow. I didn't lose reason, I just let it rest. It had taken me as far as it could, and now something deeper, quieter, took its place. I realised that truth isn't an equation to be solved, but a presence to be met. Love, beauty, awe. These are not distractions from truth. They are its language. Every scientist staring at the stars is already praying. Every musician lost in a symphony. Every parent holding a newborn. Every person stunned by the miracle of simply being here. All of them live in the same silence I touched that day. Because faith isn't a conclusion, it's communion. It's what happens when your intellect, your senses, and your soul finally agree to stop fighting and start listening. People think mysticism means floating away from the world. It doesn't. It means falling more deeply into it, seeing the sacred not in heaven, but in every grain of dust illuminated by light. The divine hides not in the extraordinary, but in the ordinary finally seen without fear. That's what I saw, or rather what saw me, and after that I couldn't write another word. I told my scribe, "All that I have written seems like straw compared to what I have seen." He thought I was ill. Maybe I was. Ill with awe. You spend your whole life trying to make sense of things, and then one day, the mystery itself becomes the sense. Logic doesn't collapse, it kneels. The map doesn't disappear, it becomes landscape. The whisper becomes song. And so my long battle between faith and reason ended not with victory, but with vision. Because when you stop trying to dominate truth, you finally start to live with it. I once wrote, "Better to illuminate than merely to shine, to deliver to others contemplated truths than merely to contemplate." Back then, I thought it was advice for monks. Now, I realise it was meant for everyone who has ever tried to make sense of this strange, beautiful mess called being human. It's not enough to know. You must share what you know in a way that brings light, not heat. The world already has enough people shouting their truths. What it needs are people who whisper them gently. You don't need to believe in heaven to live wisely. You only need to think with love. The problem isn't that people today lack intelligence. It's that their intelligence has lost tenderness. You can be brilliant and still barren, informed and still blind. Real wisdom isn't sharp, it's soft. It doesn't pierce, it illuminates. In my time, we called that contemplation. You call it burnout recovery. The practice is the same. Read slowly. Let silence finish your thoughts. Admire something useless. Watch the light on your window for no reason. Wisdom is attention made gentle. The art of looking without consuming, of knowing without controlling. When I see your world, I don't despair. I just wish you'd slow down. You've built entire systems to save seconds, and yet you spend whole lives feeling late. You chase information as if it were salvation, scrolling faster, learning less. But contemplation is not escape, it's resistance. To sit quietly, to think kindly, to refuse to react. That is rebellion now. Try being kind on the internet. That's my miracle of the century. I used to debate angels. You argue in comment sections. Same energy, less grace. But maybe that's where holiness hides today. Not in monasteries, but in your restraint before applying, in your decision to breathe before judging. Thinking with love doesn't mean agreeing with everything. It means remembering that behind every opinion is a person, behind every mistake, a longing. Truth is not a weapon, it's a mirror. Hold it gently or it cuts. So take time, think slowly. Question everything, but with tenderness. Gratitude, curiosity, patience. These are modern forms of prayer. They turn every ordinary moment into a place where meaning can rest. Because when the mind grows quiet and the heart grows kind, something sacred returns. And in that quiet, faith returns too. Not as religion, but as trust. I once wrote, "There is nothing on this earth more to be prized than true friendship." Back then, I meant friendship between souls. Now, I mean it between ideas. Because faith and reason are, at heart, two old friends who argue only because they love the same truth. They fight, they reconcile, they challenge each other, and in doing so, they keep us human. All my life, I tried to protect that fragile friendship. I learned that truth is like a candle, fragile when flaunted, eternal when protected by humility. Nietzsche once said, God was dead. I told him maybe God just unfollowed him. And yet, I think we would have understood each other in the end. He searched through chaos for meaning. I searched through logic for wonder. different roads, same hunger. Because faith isn't only religion, it's the courage to begin again when logic runs out of breath. It's the quiet decision to trust life, even when it refuses to explain itself. You don't have to pray to believe, just to keep wondering. Logic explains the stars, faith reminds you to look up. Faith is the painter trusting the next brushstroke, the scientist trusting the next discovery, the lover trusting the next heart. It's what keeps the world turning when certainty collapses. You've been told to separate knowing from feeling, intellect from awe, but they were never meant to live apart. Reason builds the cathedral, faith lights its candles. Together they make the universe not only comprehensible, but beautiful. When I think of all those nights bent over parchment, chasing meaning through ink and silence, I realise I wasn't searching for proof. I was searching for friendship, with God, with truth, with the mystery itself. And I found it not in victory, but in surrender. Faith, I've learned, is not the opposite of reason. It is reason illuminated by wonder. It is trust, curiosity, and the courage to see meaning where logic stops. So if tonight's story brought you peace, share it with someone who's still searching for theirs. Leave me a thought in the comments. Tell me what you believe in, or what you've stopped believing in. We're all learning to listen again, and if this fire still warms you, but you're still awake, still thirsty for voices in the dark, there's another companion waiting by the flames, here in the Sleepless Society, that I'd really love to show you. His name is Rumi, the poet of the heart. He'll take you even deeper, where love and faith become the same word. I think we would have been friends. The link's appearing now. On this modern screen, I'm still learning to bless instead of fear. Take care, and God bless you.